This is a must-win game. You're not a good football team if you lose 4 in a row.
Yeah.
Them coming out of the gate against a team like Jacksonville is going to be a real truth teller because the Jags are real.
Jacksonville is serious business, and very quietly, I don't know if anybody's noticed, Jacksonville has won 5 straight games. I believe they're going to lose to Jacksonville. Mr. Irrelevant started looking like he was kind of irrelevant over the last 3 games.
Clearly, the narrative surrounding the San Francisco team headed into this Jacksonville Jaguars game were not positive. Heck, I mean, even people were calling for Brock Purdy, who leads the league in QBR, and passer rating to be benched. But while I think Brock Purdy was an absolute steal, and many people don't give him the credit he deserves, and I think he's honestly a franchise quarterback, this team has another steal they got this season, and I thought he was an integral part of their success during this game. Specifically, the addition of Chase Young sparked a dominant defensive performance on this line. So without further ado, let's just jump into how this line performed during their 5-sack game. On their first sack of the day, I think this is kind of due to the offense incompetence possibly. Right here, you'll see Trevor Lawrence try to hit a bubble screen, and then maybe ETN was supposed to go out on another type of screen. I'm not too sure what they're trying to do here, but all I know is the Gravedigger came to play this game, and I think he stood out all game long. While many people would just focus on the defensive line when talking about sacks, right here, I want to point out the coverage. When you look at the top of the screen, this is where Trevor Lawrence is looking, and there's nowhere to go with the ball. Once he comes back across the middle to his next read, he's already getting crushed by Clelin Ferrell and Javon Hargrave. Another interesting fact on this play is Clelin Ferrell was the guy getting chipped, not Nick Bosa, which makes life a whole lot easier for Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, all those other guys. And this is the result when you only put one person on a guy like Javon Hargrave. He's just going to walk him back into the quarterback's lap and make it a living nightmare for your team. Maybe better for San Francisco though, it wasn't only Javon Hargrave going off, it was also Javon Kinlaw. Here, we'll see him get up in there and bat Trevor Lawrence's pass down, but he was also more than adequate in the run game as well, and that's the type of thing I love to see. Here though, I want to once again harp on the importance of coverage and the defensive line coming together to join forces. Here, Trevor Lawrence just has nowhere to get the ball, and this just stops him for a minimal gain. On the flip side though, on this play, you'll see how the rush helps out the pass. Trevor Lawrence is pressured, and you have to remember at this point, he's been under constant duress all day. So his time is sped way up, and he makes an errant throw. Even when Jacksonville was able to get off a pass though, they were constantly being batted down. Like I mentioned earlier, Kinlaw had one, but even Bosa had one this game. Perhaps the most encouraging play for the San Francisco team is Chase Young and Nick Bosa coming together for a sack, a throwback to the Ohio days, and these are two extremely talented defensive ends. I think Chase Young was an absolute steal. You're getting him for like a third comp, and if he goes somewhere and signs, you'll go ahead and get that right back. But here, you see why San Francisco brought him in and how huge of an impact this is. It's not just the sack, it's all the things that go into the sack. Nick Bosa stripping it, and Trevor Lawrence having to speed up his timing for the rest of the day and putting this Jacksonville team in a terrible position. Something great, not just for San Francisco, but also Chase Young, is how deep this defensive line is here. In Washington, Chase Young was expected to do it all, but here he can be a rotational piece and just get after the quarterback because you have guys like Clelin Ferrell who also can get after the quarterback. This line is truly one of the deepest across the entire NFL. You have Randy Gregory, and then Drake Jackson now looks like the third or fourth guy coming in, which is absolutely wild. Maybe more wild though was the game Hargrave truly had. Right here we can see how Hargrave leads to the turnover, and Hargrave can truly get it done in a variety of ways, whether it just be a pure bull rush or just uses his size and athleticism to his advantage. You have to think, this guy is one of the best defensive tackles across the entire NFL, and the last time the Niners had that, they went all the way to the Super Bowl with DeForest Buckner. Just because the Niners do have those players, I loved in this game how they didn't overly rely on them to make all the plays. Here, for instance, you can see how Nick Bosa is playing a stunt on this guard and he comes away with the sack. But also interestingly on this play, you'll see how Dre Greenlaw comes up, acts like he's going to blitz to only drop off in coverage. This wasn't the only play. San Francisco utilized trickery for their advantage. Here, for example, you can see Nick Bosa and Chase Young both lined up in the A gap. And this is something I want to see Steve Wilks as well as Chris Kasarik continue. I like seeing all this trickery, and by having those guys in the A-gap, it's a much more difficult challenge than, let's say, if they faced a traditional defensive tackle. Both Chase Young and Nick Bosa are much more athletic than them. An additional thing this does is confuse the offense. Here you can see how Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are on the offensive line and looks like they're coming, but rather last second they both drop into coverage and this just becomes a regular 4-man rush. While this rush didn't get to the quarterback, I think it sets up a lot later. You can go ahead and line up in this again and actually send a blitz, or you can drop off again. It really just makes quarterbacks think twice before just thinking you're going to be in a certain coverage. Moving on now, maybe a more impressive fact about the Niners defense as a whole is what they did to the league's 4th leading rusher. Held him to only 35 yards, and that really set up everything else that happened in this game. If you can't run, then you're going to have to pass more, and if you're passing more, then you're in obvious passing situations, and there's when Nick Bosa and Chase Young just kill your quarterback. So overall in this game, I think the Niners got back and found their identity, which has sustained them for years, and that's this front defensive line. Here in this game, they go after the quarterback all day, causing turnovers and look like an unstoppable force. A big reason for that is the addition of Chase Young. He brings a much needed spark to this team that was struggling. Young also enters a situation where he doesn't have to do it all and has a lot of talented players and coaches around him to really build upon this success. Another player that went off in this game that I just want to give one more big props to is Hargrave. It seemed like every time I was watching the film in this game, he would make a monstrous play. Overall though, I would say the defensive line had their coming out game this game. This defensive line hasn't been overly dominant all year, but in this game they were. And I think it's only a sign of things to come. With the addition of Chase Young, you can rotate in Randy Gregory, you can rotate in Clelin Ferrell, and that's going to keep the number 2 overall pick, Chase Young, healthy throughout the season. And the last time he was healthy, he won Rookie of the Year. And this year, I think he looks like a more deadly player, a more explosive player, and someone that can help the San Francisco team go deep into the playoffs. But these are just my thoughts on Chase Young, as well as this defensive line's performance throughout this game. And I'd like to hear your thoughts down below on Chase Young, as well as the performance of this defensive line, and what you're looking forward to see this upcoming game. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed. And as always, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.